Hey podcast community, it's Eric, and I've got something exciting for all you online entrepreneurs out there. If you're looking to take your e-commerce store to the next level, you need to check out Aurora Repricer. With Aura, you can effortlessly reprice your Amazon inventory automatically. Ready to elevate your Amazon business? Head over to krmpods.com/Aura to get started today.
You're listening to Fox City's Murder and Mayhem, your bi-weekly dose of true crime history in a small rural community of Wisconsin.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Fox City's Murder and Mayhem. I'm Eric.
I'm Gavin.
Gavin, we're back again. Where are we traveling to on this fine day?
We're in Marinette.
Oh, that's right. I recall that this came up in the last episode.
Yes, we are in Marinette. And this episode is, I started with one story and it turned into a different story. So the title of the story is The Brutal Death of Anna Marlo. But it isn't actually about that at all.
Okay.
It is not about that.
So give us a little, how do we start with this murder of Anna Marlo and then end up wherever we're going to end up?
So the murder's still in the story. You'll still hear the murder story today. But I started with that, and as I'm looking into it, I'm trying to find the interesting angle. And there were a couple things I was like, this is okay, but it wasn't really that interesting. Then I came across there was a character kind of not even really directly involved who was far more interesting, and that's who we're really going to be talking about.
Okay, so this is going to be interesting because I think when you go off on these little weird tangents like that, they make some of the best episodes. So
yeah, so we'll see, because this is really interesting to me. How hard it was to find information. I ended up finding quite a bit, but how much more there should be that doesn't seem to be easily available.
Okay,
surprised me. The brutal death of Anna Marlo. Except we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Albert Schwittay.
Okay. It's a cool name. Schwittay?
Yeah, Schwittay.
I feel like that's from a TV show.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah. So he's born in Germany. He came to the U.S. with his parents and settled in Marinette. He worked in the lumber business and was a farmer for a while. He went to the University of Wisconsin Law School, received his law degree in 1901, to give you an idea of our time frame we're dealing with here. He practiced law in Marinette, and he also ran a weekly newspaper called The Searchlight.
Wow, this man's got a lot of stuff going on.
He does, and he is our focus, because he is an interesting cat.
Okay.
All right. So he gets his law license in 1901. In 1904, the Marinette Bar Association tried to disbar Schwittay on 8 counts of unprofessional conduct. I don't exactly know what those charges were, but 8 charges of unprofessional conduct. And in June of that year, he was disbarred for 3 years.
Wow.
So,
but we have no idea what he did.
I don't know. And this is the problem is, the newspapers that I think really would have been able to tell me are not online.
Okay.
So there was, if it wasn't covered in a neighboring city's newspaper, I didn't quite get it. So like I said, there's going to be a few holes in the story today, but we'll get there. Now, despite the fact that he now has lost his law license, he runs for district attorney in Marinette County.
Okay. Please tell me he won.
He runs on a campaign of anti-graft, which is basically anti-corruption, anti-bribery. He says that there's corruption all through Marinette County. And in November of 1908, he is elected district attorney.
Yes! Disbarred attorney becomes a political figure. I love it.
Yes.
The story's already starting great.
After entering office, he had great difficulty getting along with rival political factions. In January 1909, the same month he started his job, he arrested a member of the county board who was also an insurance agent. Statutes forbid any county officer having a financial interest in county buildings, but this man, as an insurance agent, had the insurance policy on the county jail.
Okay.
So they arrested him for that, which is technically correct.
But it doesn't seem like something you would really arrest somebody on either. Like, you would just kind of be like, hey, there's a conflict of interest here. What are we going to do to resolve this issue?
Yeah.
You know?
So already making friends right away. 2 months after starting, Schwittay was arrested himself for perjury, criminal libel, and forgery.
Wow.
The governor also suspended him pending the outcome of the case. Assistant Attorney General Frank Tucker was handling the investigation. When the case went to the grand jury in May of 1909, the grand jury declined to indict him. Schwittay spoke publicly that until he was reinstated, he would spend his time looking into grafters in the community. The governor then reinstated him in June.
Reinstated him into his political position?
Yes, as a district attorney.
Okay.
Yep. So,
which is really also funny. How do you become because a district attorney, apologize to the listeners because I'm really stupid, but that's like the government's lawyer, right?
Yeah.
In a way?
Yep.
So he does not have a law license, but he can be a district attorney?
He does now have a law, because it got suspended for 3 years. It's back now.
Oh, okay, so once he got his law license back, he ran for...
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Now, technically, I don't know if you need a law license to run for district attorney. I feel like you should. But being a political position, maybe you don't even need to. I don't know. So, okay, March 1910, he published a political cartoon attacking his opponents. Shortly after that, someone shot into the front window of his home, but no one was injured. July 1910, he was sued by another attorney for $50,000, which is a ridiculous amount in 1910, over libel concerning articles printed in Schwittay's newspaper. Schwittay claimed he printed the facts as he knew them and said it was justice to let people know what kind of attorneys were working in Marinette. He claimed he had no hard feelings against the other attorney. This is like a major problem this guy runs into, is running a newspaper and being a politician at the same time.
Can be serious conflict of interest.
Serious conflict of interest, because I don't, is it illegal? Probably not. But when you're purposely running articles attacking your opponents, that's really not cool.
That's really sketchy.
Yeah.
If it's not illegal, it probably should be.
Yes. So then in summer of 1910, 13 charges, including those that apparently were thrown out that last time, were filed against Schwittay by the State Bar Association. He was accused of forging a lease. For example, that he claimed that heat was included in his monthly rent, even though that wasn't what his landlord wrote in the original lease. He forged a summons return. He embezzled $200 from one of his clients. He wrote bad checks. He continued to practice law after he had been disbarred the first time. While district attorney, he wrote unflattering articles about defendants he was to face at trial. He held a man in jail without charges. Just very unprofessional here. But yeah, that's the other thing. Not even just your political rivals, but if you're district attorney and you're going to go to court writing articles about the defendant,
that's not a good move.
You're already turning the public against the other person. Again, technically, is it illegal? I don't know, but it's unethical, which is why the Bar Association isn't too thrilled about it. In August of 1910, Judge Ray Stevens found him guilty on 10 of the 13 counts, and he was barred from ever being an attorney in Wisconsin again. So...
So his duration of being a lawyer did not last long,
no.
Needless to say.
So within a month of his losing his law license permanently, he ran for sheriff of Marinette County.
Oh God! And he's gonna win, isn't he?
And he wins. And he wins.
All right. So now we have a disembarred lawyer.
Yeah.
Who is a sheriff of the county now.
Yes. So what's interesting is while he's running for sheriff, he makes it very clear he's going to be a terrible sheriff. He would tell people, he wrote it in his paper, and he would tell people while he was campaigning, he said, I'm going to continue to operate my newspaper. I would rarely ever be in the sheriff's office. I just want the sheriff's job as extra income to challenge my disbarment, and most of the police work will be left up to my deputy. Like, why would you tell people you want the job to get the paycheck, but you're not going to show up?
It obviously worked, Gavin. He got elected. So, yeah. I mean,
it's so weird that he would say that in advance. So, all right. So now we get to the original version of this. Probably the biggest case that he had while sheriff was the case of Anna Marlo. She was born in Oconto County to a French-Canadian family. She married Joseph Marlo in 1902 in Oconto Falls. He was also French-Canadian. That's fine and good. But around November 1910, Anna and Joseph separated, and Joseph moved to Wasaki. Then on June 18th, 1911, so now we're during the time that Schwittay is the sheriff, Anna, who's 27 years old, was found in the yard of the Garfield School in Marinette by patrolman Frank Bruce. Her throat was slit from ear to ear. Other cuts around the neck suggested the killer was unsuccessful his first couple of times. She also had defensive cuts on her hands. Robbery was not suspected because she still had rings on her fingers. Sheriff Schwittay was soon on the scene and quickly learned that the night before, around midnight, Marlo was with 38-year-old Charles Rau at a restaurant. He was a German-born house painter and paper hanger. Rau had previously been married to another woman who passed away in 1908. They had no children. So Schwittay went looking for Rau, but he did not have to look far, because Rau walked into the funeral parlor that same morning and said that he had heard the news that Anna was dead. Rau was immediately placed under arrest for showing up at the funeral parlor. He denied killing Anna, saying they went their separate ways after drinking and then he went home. He knew nothing of the crime until he was told the next morning. Rau admitted that the two were intimate, and whatever that means in 1911, I don't know. Mm-hmm. So take it for whatever you want. When police searched his house that he shared with his mother, they found clothes stained with blood, which Rau insisted was not blood, but were stains from painting. He's like, I'm a painter. That's paint. They also confiscated razor blades. Although they were clean, they were not bloody razor blades. Rau's mother said that he had slept downstairs the night before, apparently covering for him, because the clothes were upstairs. But he admitted that he was sleeping upstairs, so his mother didn't do him any favors.
I want to see if you can correct me on this, but I find, because to me, the fact that he says, oh, that's not blood on that clothes, that's actually paint.
Mm-hmm.
To us today, that's like ludicrous, because of course they can just test it and see what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Did they really have a way that they could test that, you think? Because this is what, 1911?
1911. Yeah, I'm so glad you asked, because we're going to talk about that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Police did not know why Rau would have killed Anna. They had no public fight that anybody saw. There was really no clear motive, but he was the obvious, suspect. The district attorney also ordered the arrest of Joseph Marlo, just based on rumors that he had been verbally abusive to his estranged wife the last time they were together. He was found a week later, but he had an alibi, so it was definitely not her estranged husband. Rau appeared before Judge L.M. Evert, who had him held without bond for first-degree murder. The prosecutor was not around, so no plea was taken right away, and the matter was adjourned for a few weeks. Rau immediately retained an attorney and declined to talk about the case publicly. He maintained his innocence. So investigators sent the bloody clothes out to see if they could find whether the stains were actually paint or blood, and if they were blood, were they from an animal or a human?
So they must have had a way to do this then.
Yes. They felt that the paint was unlikely. And the reason they felt paint was unlikely is, why would he have fresh paint on his clothes if he was on a date the night before? No man in his right mind would wear dirty paint clothes to a date. Which is sound logic.
Yeah.
I mean, well done. So at this time, they had what was called and I'm going to really mispronounce this, the Uhlenhuth test? Oh, someone's going to get me on that one. Which is also known as the antigen-antibody precipitin test for species, which was invented in 1901 and could distinguish human blood from animal blood with a few different proteins that separate people from other animals. The test would continue to be refined up to the 1960s. So in 1911, it was still kind of new. It was not as refined as it is today. But yeah, to get to your point, like in 1911, they're still like, they got to run serious tests, and it's even not 100% conclusive. If this is blood, is it from a person? Is it from an animal? What kind of blood is this?
We don't really know.
So they sent them to Dr. Ludwig Hechten of Chicago. He received the samples. He sent back his results. The stains, he said, were human blood. There was no firm way at this time to tell if two blood samples came from the same person, but he did his best to try to match them up. Meaning, in this case, like, say for some reason, Rao is wearing clothes, he cuts himself and he bleeds on his own clothes.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a way to determine if that's his blood or her blood or whose blood it is. They don't have blood typing. They obviously don't have DNA. So, I mean, if you got blood on your clothes and somebody near you's just died, like, that looks pretty bad. But it's not as conclusive as it is today.
Mm-hmm.
So this Dr. Ludwig Hechten, by the way, he was originally from Westby, Wisconsin, from a Norwegian family. I don't really know where Westby is. But he was a leading expert and pioneer on such things as blood typing. And really, like, they could not have got a better expert on this, because he's got his own Wikipedia page. Like this, it's like, yeah, like he's got a fairly lengthy Wikipedia page on all the blood science that he did. So this guy in his day was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
While in jail, Rao was visited by his barber. The barber was not allowed to shave him, and he told the press that Rao's face was looking awful. Rao also made news in September of 1911 when it was reported that he was nursing his cellmate Edward Martin, who had a throat infection. Edward Martin was an alderman in Marinette who was in jail because he had purposely derailed a train. So the Marinette City Council is awesome too.
Dude, yeah. There's a lot of corruption going on.
There's
here.
some stuff going on in Marinette. I don't know. The case went to trial in October. Again, unfortunately, because the Marinette newspapers are not online, I had to kind of rely on surrounding newspapers. So there's probably some really juicy stuff in the Marinette newspapers that I just can't get without driving to Marinette. So they're not in here. Rao took the stand in his own defense and said he thought Anna was divorced. She wasn't, although she was separated. He said that they weren't engaged, contrary to rumors, and he was with her only a few times. The claim that he was jealous of her was silly, as he did not have that strong of an emotional link to her. He also testified that the food in the county jail was doped and affected the prisoner's brains and eyes. He said sometimes after eating the food in the jail, it would feel like our faces were falling off. He said, I talked to the other people in jail who were having the same effects, and we determined that the dope was in the coffee and the tea, so we stopped drinking the coffee and the tea. They called Sheriff Schwittay up to the stand just for a moment, and he's like, yeah, we didn't poison the jail food. That's not a thing. They called Joseph Marlo to testify. Again, his alibi was strong enough that, he obviously was not the killer. But he didn't look good. The defense really tried to make him look like the bad guy. Within 3 weeks of his wife being murdered, he got remarried to another woman.
But I mean, that's not horribly because they were separated for a considerable amount of time at this point, right?
They were, but the defense tried to, even though his alibi is very strong, they tried to push it, the story that, oh, you killed your separated wife so you could get married to your next wife. Like that's the angle they're trying to get, which is solid. I guess
seemed reasonable. It probably much stronger of an defense back then, because people would actually do that because divorce was so frowned upon, I would think.
Yeah, and it's what's weird. So he's on the stand and he actually says that he did not meet his current wife until after the murder. So they met and got married within a couple weeks. Which, I mean, I'm not calling him a liar, but that sounds even weirder than saying that he had previously known her. So, whatever. After deliberating for 2 hours, the jury found Rao guilty of murder in the first degree. The defense filed a motion for a new trial. Rao said the reason that he needed a new trial was, "I don't seem to find myself guilty." The judge said that the jury disagreed with him and the conviction would stand.
I don't need I need another trial because I just don't feel like I'm guilty.
Yeah. So that was that part was the part that was going to be this episode, but it's not. So there's
more to this guy, the Schmittay guy.
Yeah,
we're gonna.
So we'll go back to Sheriff Schwittay now. After this trial, Sheriff Schwittay is now charged with improper conduct while sheriff. Specifically, he was said to have submitted bills for services that had actually been done by the Marinette Chief of Police. The false bills were said to total $193, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I did the math, and in 2024 money, that's about $6,000. So it's he's pocketing a good amount of money there.
Mm-hmm.
Also growing out of this investigation, Police Chief Cook had charges filed against him for twice pulling a revolver on Schwittay. Once they had a dispute over funds and he pulled his gun, and another time Schwittay tried to get access to the city jail and couldn't and kicked in a locked door. After kicking in the door, Chief Cook pulled the gun on him again. So, I don't know if somebody in Marinette has written about this and it's just not online and it's not published in a book, but seriously, somebody in Marinette,
you have to tell this story because this guy's hilarious.
Yeah, I think if you really get down into it, you're going to find some great stuff here. More charges came down in November where Schwittay alleged to submit bills to reimburse matron fees for transporting female prisoners. And what that means is, at this time, and perhaps still today, I'm not entirely clear, but at this time, if you were transporting a prisoner from Marinette to state prison or wherever,
mm-hmm.
if it was a female prisoner, you were supposed to have a female, they call it a matrons, with you. Kind of like how today, if you're going to get strip searched.
Yeah.
Male officers aren't supposed to strip search female prisoners or whatever. So it's a similar concept. So he submitted bills to reimburse for these matron fees. But when they looked into it, found out that he had not actually used a matron at all and was just pocketing the money saying he had somebody with him. He tried to cover that charge up by then bribing a woman in Detroit to say that she had acted as the matron, but she reported him and this bribery charge was tacked on too. But before these charges could get to trial, Schwittay is running for election in the Wisconsin State Assembly.
Okay.
And he wins.
Come on! What the heck? I mean, dude, are they just not aware this is a despicable person?
I don't know.
I mean, come on.
I don't know. He took office in January 1913, but shortly after taking office, He was rushed to a Madison hospital with pneumonia. He had what they called a nervous breakdown, and the pneumonia ended up actually killing him in the hospital. He was 39 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he...
And of course, the charges against him never went to trial because he was deceased. He did have a daughter named Catherine who was around 6 years old when her father passed away. So, I mean, she really didn't get to know him. Interestingly, she eventually married Carl Banke, who was an Appleton attorney. What became of her, I don't know, but I just find it interesting that she then herself gets married into an attorney family. So, final note. The State Historical Society has multiple boxes of the governor's investigations into Schwittay. And again, I think it would make a fascinating subject for somebody in Marinette to look into this. Again, I didn't do it. I didn't drive to Madison to do this. But in looking into this, I find that there was what's called governor's investigations. That's just what it's called. Mm-hmm. And they have that collection in Madison, and 3 of the boxes have Schwittay's name on it. So
what would trigger a government investigation into somebody? Do you know enough about
political corruption? I mean,
which I mean, did he ever have a job where he wasn't arrested at some point for just complete malpractice of what he was supposed to be doing?
No,
I mean, and yet. It had to have been the power of him having the newspaper that kept getting him elected for things, right? Wouldn't you think?
I'm sure the newspaper was a big help.
Because, I mean, maybe it could happen either way.
But that's another thing.
Wow.
So, the normal Marinette newspaper, and somebody from Marinette can correct me, I think it's called the Eagle Star. And that's what I would rely on for getting more details than what I was able to do here. I still think it turned out pretty good, but I would have liked to have a little bit more. But his newspaper is the Searchlight, and neither of them are online. But I think reading through the Searchlight, I think would be fascinating. Because he's whatever these editorials are that he's writing in these political cartoons that he's publishing, they are apparently not okay.
So now, do you know it? Does the Searchlight still exist?
Not today, but it might exist on microfilm or something.
Yeah, it probably exists at the library or something where you could go see it all.
I assume that somebody preserved it. Most newspapers were preserved in some way. You were supposed to send your newspaper to the state, and the state would then bind them into books, and the books were then later turned into microfilm. So presumably it was, although maybe he didn't follow those rules. I don't know. But the Eagle Star, it would be preserved. Yeah.
Yeah, because the Eagle Star, I'm assuming, is maybe even still around.
It might still be around. I think it might still be around, yeah.
But the Searchlight, do you know, did it ever survive past this guy, or was this...
Not really. I know that his wife ran it briefly, but I don't think it really survived her.
After that.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. So this is just an amazing story of massive, massive corruption. And
yeah,
I mean, this is on, would you say, Illinois, Chicago outfit type level of corruption in a way?
Yeah. I mean, there's the difference here is that when you're talking Chicago, it's people taking bribes and looking the other way. This guy isn't taking bribes. He's just acting bad on his own behalf. But yes, definitely Chicago level bad government.
And I would love to I wish we could somehow get an impression of what the people of Marinette thought of this guy.
Yeah.
Because he obviously had enough support that he kept getting elected. But was there just a clear divide where half the city just thought he was the most useless human being ever and the other half completely supported him? I mean, the level of corruption is shocking. And to think that somebody like that can continue to get
are you referring to Nixon?
No. I was referring to who you thought I was referring to. But
I mean, you can talk bad about Nixon. No, that's acceptable.
But I mean, at the same time, it's just the level of corruption, how he continues to get into these positions is mind-blowing to me.
No, I 100% agree, because so he's elected district attorney, gets kicked out. Elected sheriff, gets kicked out. Elected to the state assembly, dies, but presumably would have done more bad things.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a couple of different ways to look at this. One is either, like you're saying, half the people like him and half the people hate him, and the half that like him is just enough to get him the votes.
Yeah.
Or he's not as bad as this seems, and he's the one who's right, and he's running all these things saying that everybody else is corrupt. Now, I don't personally believe that, but
you could see how he could really paint that picture, again, having that newspaper.
Right.
Absolutely. He had a lot of power with that newspaper. He could get out a lot of, absolutely.
But yeah, that's the thing. If he's writing this newspaper and he's saying how bad everybody else is, whether it's true or not, that might make him look like he's not that bad.
Yeah. Where we look at it and this guy's terrible, but he might have, everybody else might have looked at it and said, well, he is terrible, but he's a lot better than the other options that we have out there. So.
Right. So, again, I'm not going to do it, but if somebody wanted to, specifically somebody in Marinette, but anybody really, wanted to do this, I think you'd have a heck of a story here. I mean, I don't know if you could do book length out of it, but you could definitely write a serious story about this guy in the wider political situation in Marinette, for sure.
Yeah, and how much, just you hear this one story and it's riddled with corruption. How much other corruption was going on at that time in Marinette? It could have just been a poisonous political environment.
It could have been. Marinette's not that big. Mm-hmm. So if this guy's having these kind of problems and the chief of police is having problems and what is going on? I don't know.
So
I had no idea, within the last couple of weeks, I have really, really learned a lot about Marinette. And, it's become a lot more interesting. Not that I had anything against Marinette, but you got a lot more interesting now, Marinette.
So, all right. Well, do you got anything else with that one, or should we wrap her up? Or
that's pretty much it. Yeah. I will say next time. So I had a different episode I was going to do next time, and I've decided to bump that one off because I want to do our listener suggested episode first.
Yeah, so we did recently receive an email from a listener that and he just kind of had a little attachment. It's an Appleton story, right?
It's an Appleton story.
Remember right?
Yep.
So yeah, Gavin dug into it a little bit based on the little information the guy had about it, and so he thinks there's a story there. So
I do think there's a story there, and so I've started to put it together. It'll be ready by next time, and yeah, so the other one I was going to do, that'll just get pushed off another week too, whatever. Because, I want to give the listeners what the listeners want. And I think it's a good story. So, why not? Get it out there.
Yeah. See? So now, for all of you listeners out there, think, how many times have you submitted an episode idea to a podcast and actually had them make the episode? We do that. So
yeah, we do that.
Heck, we let the listeners write the episode.
We did do that. Yeah, but this one I'm writing from scratch, and I think it'll be interesting. I've been pulling up old maps going back to the 1930s. I've been kind of looking into it a bit. So
cool.
I think it's gonna be fun.
All right. Well, with that, we can wrap this episode up then. We will be back in 2 weeks with the listener-submitted episode, and we will see everybody on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Fox City's Murder and Mayhem. Join us in 2 weeks for another exciting episode of Murder and Mayhem.